All right, it's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Milton Plan Commission for January 26th, 2021 to order. And Abby, the first item is the roll call.
Bruce,
Here.
Murray. Here. Paulson,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
and Brar is also present.
Wow, so 14. All right, so we have no public hearing this time. So the first item is the approval of the minutes. So any changes, questions, or anything about the minutes? Otherwise, I need a motion to approve.
Can I suggest a very minor change?
Yes.
When we were talking about the comprehensive plan and we wanted to see a distinction between existing neighborhoods and single family on the land use map,
Yes.
the distinction was the color distinction. That we didn't want to change the text distinction. So that's a minor thing. It just,
Got it.
So
it was all
Abby-
those different shades of yellow and we couldn't see the difference.
Yes,
Yep.
I remember that. So yellow
Sorry,
is
I
a-
should have caught that earlier.
Yellow is a good color, but you know, the light, the gold and everything. So, but you know, there has to be some differences. So anything else? Okay, I need a motion to approve then.
I move.
That's John, and need a
I'll second, Paulson.
Okay, second by Kurt Paulson. Any further changes other than that color and thing? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Wow, I'm getting some echo here, so. So, well, approved unanimously. We are on to item number 1. Certified survey map for 7003 University Avenue. Ian Kidster. So Mark is here, or Abby, you want to take it, or Daphne, whoever?
I can take it, Mayor, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, yes.
So
Mark.
there are currently 4 lots near the northeast corner of University and Park Street. And the applicant, Ian Chittister, who owns one of the lots, has worked out this arrangement with his neighbors to combine the 4 lots into 3, as shown in the CSM. Our engineering staff have reviewed the CSM and don't have any concerns with it. And from a zoning standpoint, it reduces the non-conforming dimensions, the minimum dimensions required for R1 and R2 lots. The lot 2, the existing house there is zoned R2. The shift in the lot line means that we will also have to adjust our zoning map so that the R2 boundary shifts eastward slightly, and that will have to be a separate process. Our lots 1 and lots 3, lot 1 and lot 3 will remain single family R1 zoning.
Okay,
So we recommend approval.
all right. Any questions for Mark or Ian or any other suggestions? It looks like fairly routine thing. And I'm,
Mark, I've got a quick question for Mark.
yes, go ahead.
Mark, could you just go back to the CSM for a moment? I want to make sure I understood that you talk, is the lot south of lot 1, is that affected at all?
No, and our engineering staff identified that there's some potentially some conflicts in the records, the survey records for that lot, but that's not affected by this subdivision, this land division at all. So the CSM does not affect that lot at all.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? So how could they find that little lot there? So sitting empty.
I'm
Any
sorry, I
other
don't have,
questions?
okay.
I would I would move approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments.
Ramsey would second.
Okay. So the motion by Commissioner Kurt Paulson and second by Commissioner Ramsey. Any further questions or comments now? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the certified survey map for 7003 University Avenue, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to, well, thank you, Jan. So we are on to item number 2. And this is the concept review of proposed apartment building, the Conservancy 2644 Branch Street, and the staff did propose that maybe rather than Conservancy to find a new name, but okay, so this is Abby.
Thank you, Mayor. To reiterate, this is concept review. This is the very first stage before a rezoning application is submitted for a project. This is a request from TJK Design Build for concept review. And there are representatives of TJK on the line as well, and they are available to answer any questions that may come up. I'm hearing an echo too, and I know the mayor was hearing one earlier. Could everybody please just mute yourself until it's your turn to speak and then unmute yourself when it's your turn? Maybe that will help. Okay. Yep. So this is a concept for 40 units of market rate apartments. And the site there at the corner of Century and Branch is currently zoned B2, which is General Business District. This project will require a rezoning to Planned Development District. And our staff is very supportive of having multifamily housing at this corner. We think it's a great location for housing. It's well served by public lands and by transit. There's a grocery store less than half a mile away. And as identified in our future land use map of our draft comprehensive plan, this site was identified as Avenue mixed use. And so having multifamily housing would be keeping in line with what we've envisioned through the draft comp plan as well. We do have some concerns though about removing the commercial component from this corner. And we think that by keeping this, at least having a mixed use component with ground floor retail, that would provide an opportunity for some neighborhood serving retail on this key corner. And we don't require mixed use development. We don't recommend it on every project because we don't want to create an oversupply. But this is really a key intersection for the city, not just from our transportation network, but also this is, the primary crossing of the Pheasant Branch Conservancy trail corridor. And this, Century Avenue is an arterial street that carries about 18,000 cars a day. And we think that having a mixed use component, we think that commercial could be supported at this corner. This project is within the historic Pheasant Branch Crossing District. And there are some special design guidelines that are applied to properties as they redevelop in this area. The Stagecoach Trail apartment project across the street was the first that went through that historic Pheasant Branch Crossing design guideline process. And I think it turned out really, really well. And it really helps to make that area feel more cohesive and highlight the historic nature and the historic structures that are in that area. There is a triangle of land. I believe we brought it to the Plan Commission within the last couple of months as a concept for the city to pursue acquiring that excess right-of-way from the county, and our Plan Commission and our Public Works Committee were both supportive of that. And the county is also supportive of selling that land either to the city or to the developer. And we have a rough cost estimate. It's about $15,000. We are in the process right now of preparing a survey, which would be needed in order to determine the exact amount of land. And there are some encumbrances, I believe, within that triangle, some utility easements that are going to need to be carried forward. We had a meeting with the County Highway Department this week, and we learned some really important information about that Century Avenue Bridge. That is a project that we have been looking at for years, which is to consider putting the Pheasant Branch Conservancy Trail beneath Century Avenue. But of course, in order to do that, we would need to replace the Century Avenue Bridge. And our understanding for many years has been that it wasn't in need of replacement. But we have learned that it now does need to be replaced. And the county will be doing some repairs to the bridge this spring to strengthen the timber pilings, but that is only a short-term fix. In about a month's time, the county is going to be providing an official notice to the city of the need to undertake this bridge reconstruction project, and the county will expect the city to respond to their request within a month's time. So this is going to happen like really quickly. We need to at least conceptually have an idea of how we're going to proceed with this project. There are some opportunities for funding of the project, and I know we're getting a little off track, but this is fresh information about the bridge, and I know it all kind of ties together with this project and redevelopment in this area. The county is going to require a 50% cost share for the bridge replacement. And so we're exploring options right now about whether it makes sense for this to go into the federal bridge program, or whether the city should not go that route because the federal program does not fund enhancements. So the trail and the any additional right-of-way, land acquisition, and other changes would not be able to be funded through the federal bridge program. So I really hope that the city will proceed with putting the trail beneath the road there. I have seen so many times people crossing the street there on the diagonal, and it's just an accident. You know, we wouldn't want to see an accident in that location. And I think that is a really important project, and it will not be inexpensive, but I hope that it's something that the city can look at long-term, looking at that bridge replacement. Another component of this project that should be discussed is parking. We know that a lot of Conservancy users have been using this site for parking temporarily because the restaurant in that location is closed. And the city has a planned trailhead on the other side of Century Avenue, so on the north side of Century Avenue. And that trailhead, we acquired that ½ an acre of land using mostly funding through the Knowles Nelson Land Acquisition Program with the DNR. If the city decides that we need to move the trailhead project up because of this, any redevelopment that might take place on this site, there is an application cycle for that Knowles Nelson funding, and it's May and June. And we would need to be submitting an application if that's a project that we're going to want to bump up. The engineering staff provided some feedback on this concept, and those were embedded in the plan set. And other than that, I don't have any other comments. Staff is generally supportive of this project, but we would really like to see some commercial carve out on the ground floor.
Thank you, Abby. So right now it's very preliminary. We don't really have any timeline. Would it be a year, 2, or that would be, because we got so many things happening all of a sudden at that particular corner now. I know we want to do that bridge since it was so expensive, and we stopped it. And so then all of a sudden it's like a bonanza, and we have to look at various choices. And that would actually will improve that corner, that area tremendously. I mean, it will make a huge difference. And I have seen that corner. We lived here since '82. I know there used to be that Branch Street retreat. They stayed there for a long time, and then there were 2 taco places thereafter, which didn't last long. And we were hoping that this common ground will was doing well until the pandemic came. So there always have been a restaurant in that corner. So I don't know. I sort of agree with you, but and then there's one of the wild boar or whatever that is. They have been pretty successful. So I don't know exactly what the needs are, but I don't think that your idea of having something commercial or that kind is a bad idea. So anyway, so let's open it up and open it up to the commissioners and let's see what is your input. Randy, you want to start or who wants to start first?
Have we had any conversation with the developer as far as looking at mixed use on the first floor? Obviously, you've had some conversations with them. Has there been any feedback?
We've expressed our interest, and I don't recall the response, but it wasn't included in the concept, so I'm guessing you don't support it.
My name is John Bano. I'm with TJK Design Build, and I'm the one that is presenting or answering questions and available. With respect to the mixed use aspect of it, it was something that we explored in the early stages, especially after listening to what staff had commented and requested. But taking a look around at what's going on with the pandemic and with some empty storefronts and with the need for parking, it was determined that a mixed use just wasn't in the cards for this project because of those reasons, because of not knowing exactly what's out there for the future of brick and mortar retail. There are also a tremendous number of empty storefronts that would lease up first because they're in a more desirable location. While there are a number of cars that travel back and forth on Century Avenue, most of them are not slowing down. It's a thoroughfare for at this intersection. So I have a feeling with those things under consideration, along with the fact that what has been brought up already about this site being used as a parking area for the conservation area, that the competition for the parking stalls that would be on site would be so high that it would just cause a lot of angst for any kind of retail aspect that we would put into this location. So long story short, it was determined for all of those reasons and more that it was in the best interest of the success of the project to just keep it as an apartment complex.
Okay, any questions for John?
John, this is Randy.
Hello, Randy.
I totally understand the need to limit the amount of commercial space to places where it's viable. I don't think the city of Middleton wants to have empty storefronts, but the corner of Century and Branch Street particularly is, it's a busy intersection, maybe not the best for apartments at that location. Would there be any interest in adding commercial just at that corner? I was looking at that two-story piece that you have proposed there. Even leaving the apartments, the apartment count the same, but just putting some first floor commercial and making that a three-story element there, and getting, I don't know what we'd get, maybe 1,500 square feet or something of commercial space might be enough to activate the corner and do what the city's looking for.
Okay. It's something that we could explore and we could certainly take a look at. I know that at this point, we did not, we're also sort of playing some of these requirements of the historic covenants that are put on the site, a concern by the neighborhood to not have a building that's incredibly tall, architecturally to have something that sort of steps itself down and makes itself more scalable at the intersection. So all of those things are factoring into some of how the design itself has come about, and all of those things. We can go back and take a look at that. If that's something that the Plan Commission and the city strongly feels, we could do that. But at this point, I think that the general understanding of the developer is that it's not of an interest to them.
Any more questions for John or any other
Mayor,
comment?
Timothy Critter also has his hand raised from TJK.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Unmute. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Okay, good. And thank you for your time. Tim Critter, TJK Design Build, John Walsh, Lean Associates. Randy, your point is well taken, and we did take a strong look at the viability for that corner for commercial. And one of the early trade-offs that we discussed with the city was sort of density and height, as Johnny alluded to. And it was sort of, okay, do we want to do a 3-story building, market rate apartments, and no commercial? Do we want to try to put some commercial into the space and then go 4 stories so we can get the density that we think the corner really warrants? There's a tremendous amount of retail and commercial space in the area. It's a very walkable location. We're very excited about it, and its relationship, obviously, to the Conservancy. I think it's going to make it a very attractive place for people to want to live and partake in that. If you stop down there in any given afternoon, there's people and their dogs and baby carriages and everyone doing their thing in and about. It's wonderful. And as the mayor, or maybe Abby alluded to it, it is going to be a parking location for Conservancy users. And I've had several experiences with commercial property where you're just continually battling with the tenants and the people who are parking there that shouldn't rightfully be parking there. And it's such a tight site, given the complexities with the corner. We're still uncertain about the county ownership of that corner. We're assuming that's going to go through. And then the proximity to the environmental corridor makes it very, very challenging. And we just feel that this is really the best adaptation for that site right now. And parking's a concern, frankly. And there's right across the street is a Quick Trip, which is essentially a small grocery store. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you.
Kurt, you have a questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm just getting my screen up here. So let's, can I start with asking about parking? I see on the, and Daphne, if you can go back up to the kind of site plan. There you go. And actually for the developers, when you do a formal proposal, can you show the site plan that shows the building placement of the apartment that is directly south? I think it's called Forest Ridge. I think there's enough trees in between that it's not a building placement issue, but we'd like to see that. The second question is, you're proposing, let me pull it up, 40 units and 24 underground stalls, and how many surface stalls? 12. So I count 36 total stalls for 40 units. And I think that will raise some concerns with the neighbors. I don't necessarily have a concern with it because there's a bus station, a bus stop right adjacent to your parcel, right? On the across the street on Century Avenue.
That's correct.
Right, okay. So yeah, you'll probably need to sign those stalls for not Conservancy use. As you know, people like to use the free parking provided by a private property owner. So with that, I do have concerns on the west side of the property where it slopes down pretty steeply down into the creek, into the creek corridor. Have you considered flipping the building so that the large element of the L would be along Branch Street rather than along the corridor? I know that alters some of the proximity to the Conservancy for your residents, but I'm wondering if you could do it along there and then you drive and the parking is off of the street and behind the building, so it's not visible from the street. I know we're trying to activate Century Avenue, but on a corner lot, we'd like to have building along both frontage if possible. So that's just an idea for you to respond to.
Okay. Kurt, good points. And I'll try to take them one at a time. Your first comment about the neighboring properties, yes. We haven't hired an engineering firm. This is just sort of like the 60,000 foot
Right.
view, you know, back of a a little bit more detail than the back of a napkin kind of thing. So yes, if the project moves forward, we will definitely have most of the comments, again, that the city engineer had placed are well intended, but far beyond the area of what level of information that we're at. So yes, we will include those things. The second thing you had asked about when flipping the building, and the simple answer is yes. That was my initial concept, was to go that route. The problem that we're running into is two things. One, the covenants say that the building should be up against the conservancy at this location. So that was one of the reasons why we did this. And the reason it's L-shaped is because there was some very distinct, strong feelings from staff and recommendations about activating that intersection. So instead of having a rectangular shaped building, we ended up with this L that sort of accentuated the Century Avenue elevation and pushed the building to that intersection. So that's that part of it as well.
And these are the private covenants on the parcel?
Nope, these are the historic covenants. If you read the covenants themselves for this particular location, it says that it wants to have buildings pushed up against the conservancy.
Okay.
I was not aware of that.
So I assume that those are restrictions that the Plan Commission can modify if needed. Is that right, Abby?
That's correct. Yeah, they're not covenants, they're design guidelines.
Design guidelines. Okay.
And yeah,
Okay, go ahead, Tim. So you have something to add.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out, John is absolutely correct in respect to how we looked at this project in how we sited the building. And the other really key fundamental thing which attracted us to this site is really the adjacency to the Conservancy. I mean, across the street on Branch Street, we've got I don't even know if it's 24/7, but we've got a well-lit gas station and pumps and Quick Trip across the street. And we felt it was more advantageous to have 20-some units of nice residential pushed up against the Conservancy, which we see as really the namesake to what this project's all about. And so with minimal surface parking, we felt it more appropriate to buffer that to the building, to the Quick Trip, than it was to not take advantage of the views in and about the Conservancy as the building tucks up against that environmental corridor.
I just wanted to raise it. I don't know how stable those that slope is, but you can engineer that. What I also hear you saying is, given the parking that you're providing, there's just no room on the site for additional commercial, because that would also trigger separate parking for the commercial.
I am in agreement with that. I think that's correct. You know, so I just think that the site doesn't really warrant commercial to that extent for the reasons that we discussed earlier.
If you wanted, or if you were required to have commercial, would you probably have to go to 4 stories on all the residential just to cover the additional costs? Because you'd need to probably do another layer of underground parking.
We talked about that. I would not encourage 2 levels of underground parking. If we were to go commercial, we would probably elevate the 2nd floor and then put some at-grade parking below the building. You know, if you will, a building up on stilts. It's not a direction we're really fond of going. I think it's a complexity that, given the cost of the site and the really the size, because it's a rather small site, the complexities I think would certainly outweigh the economic benefit or economic sense for the project, frankly.
Okay. What is the parcel size? I'm just pulling it up here. It looks to be about less than an acre, right?
I'll defer to John on that, but that sounds
about 36,000 square feet or something?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That man up. Can I do something?
Yeah, Kurt, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, John Schaefer. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I understand the idea about putting building close to the Conservancy as a beautiful view for people inside the apartments. But I concur with Kurt that what about the people who are in the Conservancy with this huge sort of monolithic thing hanging right over the edge of there when they're down? So a 3-story building becomes sort of a building when you're down in the gully. The shade factor would be almost all day. And I would certainly prefer to look at an option that would change this sort of suggestions and move the building more towards the street and get it a little bit away from the pit of the Conservancy, because I think what's good for the people in the apartment be bad for the people on the path.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And if we did explore that option, keep in mind that would then provide surface parking on the Conservancy side of the structure.
Right, but I thought, to me, that would be okay because that's actually parking that's invisible from people in the,
Okay.
In the Conservancy, yeah.
yeah, when you're down in the hole, so to speak.
The other thing I should note is we had an opportunity to share this plan with the owner of the Stam House. I forget his name. And Jacob Klein, who did the Stagecoach across the street, and both were supportive. But that we did have a candid discussion on parking, and someone brought that up earlier. We do intend on parking this 1-to-1. So we do have a way to expand the footprint for the underground parking and add, John can correct me again, but add an additional 4 to 5 stalls in the ground.
Okay.
Mayor, I
Yep.
just had a quick question. I was kind of glancing
Go
through
ahead.
the design guidelines because I did not remember seeing anything in there about locating the building closer to the Conservancy Creek corridor. And
Mhm.
was that in the written part of the design guidelines that you were reacting to, or was that like a conceptual site plan? Because I didn't see it in there. I saw that the building should be located to activate the corner and it should be parallel and set close to both street frontages, but I didn't see anything in the design guidelines about locating the building close to the Conservancy.
Abby, I don't have a copy of those in front of me right now, and I'll be honest, it's been a long time since we took a look at the original sketches of this. From my memory, it was a combination of both. It was either verbiage that was in the guidelines themselves, and also a concept that was included for this site by Vanderwall in their concepts.
If I can jump in here,
Yeah,
if
go
you
ahead,
look at
Paul.
the guidelines, page 7, it's number 2, architectural guidelines. You see the kind of sketch plan for a building. That's a building that is on the west side of the Conservancy. That building is actually oriented towards the street and the parking. That one, sorry, right there. You see, that's not actually that top building to the northeast side of that, Daphne. There you go. Yep, that one. Yep, that's not oriented toward the Conservancy.
Yep.
I would disagree. It is. It's the parking is. It's just a mirror of what we have on our project. The building itself is oriented to the conservation, and the parking is on the opposite side. And I'm not trying to be argumentative, but this is something very similar to what we had presented. But again, it seems like that it's something that the commission seems stronger about having a building oriented to the street rather than the conservation, the Conservancy. So we'll take that into consideration as this project moves forward. But I'd be willing to want to hear more feedback from people if possible, please.
Well, in this case, the parking is just where you have it on yours, but parking is really like a street. So in a sense, if you have this whole driveway through that corridor, that's really facing on the street on both sides. And so I would argue that this is in fact a mirror image, would be a mirror image if you flip yours, and what yours is not, yours is a duplicate of this.
And also,
Yeah.
I would wonder, John and Tim, that you would of course look at the soil close to the Conservancy. I don't know if would be just as good as close to the street, but I don't know about that. So, any other questions?
If I,
Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, if I might, I'll weigh in just a little bit differently, perhaps. You know, normally I would be totally supportive of putting the building up on the corner and along both streets. This one, it's we have two, you know, we have really two public realms that we have to pay attention to, both Branch Street and the Pheasant Branch Creek. And the creek and that path are really the public realm. I think might even take more priority than Branch Street. I struggled with the site plan at first as well, and was wondering whether the parking should be flipped to the back. I think there's an argument, frankly, both ways. I do concur with Kurt that the bank there is an issue, and stability along that bank is an issue. I'm not sure. You know, we've seen erosion and destabilized banks along that creek. So, you know, that may be a reason for putting the building up along Branch Street. But I do think there's an architectural argument to having it the way they do have it.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have an opinion about that as well. I think I wouldn't mind seeing the building the other direction, because from a space perspective and the future of this building, if it would ever change, you'd have the parking along the Pheasant Branch area, and it could be used as an outdoor space for the apartment users. If they were to have a party or something, they could enjoy that outdoor area. It could also be that, you know, as the issue of commercial space came up earlier, you know, I kind of see that area along Century as being, you know, quite loud at this point and activated with the traffic, but it also could provide an opportunity along the creek for a very nice commercial space where people can, you know, enjoy the creek. Now, the points made about parking and commercial, you know, are valid, and so there would need to be some exceptions to some of the things that we have in zoning. The other thing I guess I wanted to ask Abby about, are there any planning requirements or things that we've thought about through the long range plan, talking about the creek and view sheds, either like two other areas out, if you're in Pheasant Branch Creek and you're looking out, does it say, do we have any statements about our desires for what that experience should be like?
That's a great question, Jen, and I don't think we have anything in our draft comp plan, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to include in there, because we constantly hear concerns from people in the community as properties along the creek corridor redevelop, starting with Cromrie, and how visible that became when you're walking on the path. I don't know if it's something that's being contemplated in the Pheasant Branch Creek corridor plan that's underway right now. I've kind of been following along with that, and I don't recall that being discussed either, but I can check in with our public lands director and see.
Okay. And then my only last comment or question would be about the design itself, and just in terms of the historic guidelines that are set in the document that was attached to our notes. The part that currently in this plan, the piece that is on Century and Branch looks more postmodern to me. I guess the question for me would be, are there elements in that piece of the design that are intended to be historic, or is it really just the contrast to the bulk of the buildings on the west, the 4-story portion? I'm just trying to understand the historic pieces of that part of the building.
If I could, I'll reply to you, Jen. And again, I'll take them one at a time. To answer part of your question regarding the view from the Pheasant Branch Conservancy to the building itself, it's a great question. And there is, CARP-C does have in place maintaining an environmental corridor through this location. And basically what they are, and this is sort of reading some tea leaves from them, but as long as the edge of what the tree line is maintained, then we are maintaining the environmental corridor. And if you remember, this site is pretty much paved right up into the edge of the embankment. And what we have sort of given ourselves as a design guideline is a recommendation that came from staff of maintaining a 30-foot setback, which is sort of a rule that they have been using for limitations to wetland, to water. And so what we did is we have a 30-foot setback, which is outside of the vision corridor, which CARP-C will be looking to be maintaining. And we've sort of shown that on our drawings as well, both the 30-foot setback and the limits of the environmental corridor that they're looking to maintain. So we're outside of those things. And then with respect to the aesthetic of the building itself, you're right. When I designed this building, the main rectangle, the block, was intended to be sort of that historic building. And I included a couple of images of architecture that I used as a sort of place to start. Then what I looked at was the part that came off towards the intersection itself, and then again on the back portion of the building, as just like this building itself that you're looking at right here, it's been added on to. So the building that we have designed is one that has a historic nature that's more traditional, and then an addition, or something that looks more like an addition that has been put on at a later date. So you're right, it does have a different aesthetic. It is not exactly the same, but I believe that the rhythms sort of still work together. If you take a look, there's the banding, the horizontal lines, they're all congruent. Architecturally, I think that it still works, but that's just me. So that is how the aesthetic came about.
Okay, thank you, John.
John, this is Randy. If I like the historical references and the buildings, form and design. I wonder a little bit about the two-story brick belt that runs around the building, and if that really works with the 3- and 4-story form that we have. It seems to tie into the addition piece that you have, but I don't know if it, I'm not sure that it reads as a historic building because of that detailing. It wouldn't be typical. I don't know if there's another way of redistributing the brick that you've got on the building. Maybe take a look at that and see if there might be another way that might read more historic than this particular application.
That's fair.
Okay,
And
other
if
questions
I
or
can just follow up,
comments?
I don't see any balconies on the front of the building in any of the historical photos. I don't know if those are all that necessary. I see the historical photos as a much plainer building in the front, with fewer insets and balconies. And I guess the only other question is, those trees that you show on the site plan, are those on your property or on the conservancy?
Those are on our property. According right now, we don't have the actual CSM of the property, but having talked to the engineer who did the work across the street, The CSMs of these properties went to where the center line of Pheasant Branch Creek used to run at the time that the plat was made. So right now we are using the edge of the current line of Pheasant Branch Creek as our property line.
Okay. So you would be open to at least some sort of landscape performance standards as a condition of use that would maintain some sort of tree cover that would actually block most of the view of the apartment building from within the conservancy? I'm not sure how we would effectuate that, but that's what I think I heard you saying.
We have to maintain the vision corridor as part of CARP-C's agreement for this. So
As part of the E corridor, they consider the vision from down in the creek that you would
No.
not see any buildings?
No.
No.
They consider this an environmental corridor, basically at the tree line.
Okay.
So
And to just expound on that, essentially, we cannot encroach within that boundary at all.
So it's an encroachment issue. It's not a view shed issue.
Correct. And and it's zero disturbance within that level. I mean, if that's full of box elder and everything else, so be it. That's we can't tread.
Well, that might be different than our proposed Pheasant Branch plan, which would probably seek to eventually eliminate all the box elder and replace it with something else, obviously.
I wouldn't disagree with that for a moment. I'm just suggesting, based on our marching orders and what historically we've seen from CARP-C, is what we call the no zone. So we just stay 100% out of there.
Okay.
Regarding how that environmentally gets treated by a conservancy task force or whatnot is really not in our control.
I would recommend, as you move along in the process, then that you consult with our Conservancy Lands Committee, because no doubt they will want to weigh in on this.
I'm sure that it will go to CLC at some stage, Deb, isn't it? Or not?
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation, and it's up to the commission to determine whether you'd like it to go now as a concept or if you want to wait for a formal rezoning application.
I think probably better to wait, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Mayor, this is Mike. I just had just a quick
Go ahead,
question.
Mike. Go ahead.
Not so much about the layout, but about the bridge. And Abby, I guess in our discussions with the county, it may be premature, but, have they shared any concept plans for the bridge reconstruction? The reason I ask that, so south of Century Avenue, the bike path runs on the west side of the creek. North of Century Avenue, it's on the east side. So there's going to have to be a crossing. And if the crossing is south of Century Avenue, is that in any way going to interfere with, and it doesn't look like it is. And John, I guess the architect, I'd ask you guys if that would potentially interfere with your layout. And this might be something else that we can refer to the Conservancy group to be looking at that. Or would you cross under Century Avenue and then cross over the water on the north side? And it seems to me we should have some idea about that, as it relates to, how it might potentially affect, the layout that's shown here.
Yeah, and I think it ties in with the trailhead location on the north side of Century Avenue. And we are planning for a PED bridge
Okay.
on the north side. Yep.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be, right up against the street. I mean, it would be set in and tie in with the future site for the trailhead.
But the bridge over the creek would be on the north side of Century, is what you're saying.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Right, thanks.
the other thing, Mike, is there is some concrete structures with pipes in that location currently that it looks like it may be from some storm pipe that just spill out at that location. Another reason why we've kind of avoided doing anything up in that section as well.
Okay.
If I could weigh in and just take the commission's time up just a little bit more.
Go ahead.
Monday, February 1st is a crossroads for the development team. And we need to make some frankly hard and fast decisions on how to proceed and if we want to proceed on this project. I certainly respect the mayor's request in terms of not making a recommendation till you get a formal zoning application. But we would like some sort of a warm and fuzzy or some sort of direction from the plan commission this evening in terms of where we're at in respect to use. I mean, Randy's comments on design, we get that. We can look at, possibly flipping the building. We can certainly explore some of the aspects of some small commercial space. But we need to know where we're at overall in a non-binding opinion, recommendation, or a voice from the plan commission here this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, go ahead. Please provide your input. What do you think?
So this is Jen. I really like the housing aspect of the site. The apartments seem fine to me. I wouldn't mind seeing commercial activation on street level, and possibly a look at if the building is flipped to sort of provide opportunities to activate the street in a different way, and possibly for the residents to use that space in a different way also and be a little more flexible. I don't mind the design. I like it. I think it sort of fits on Century Avenue where there's sort of a mix at this point. So if this was there, I think it would fit the corridor.
Okay, thank you.
I
Daniel.
agree. I like the use. It's a good place for housing. All the issues I raised, gentlemen, were secondary design issues. So,
Yeah,
Thank you, Kyle.
and I would agree. I'm supportive of the use. I would like to see some measure of commercial if we can make it work. I'd like to see a little higher parking ratio than what's presented now. And I'm not personally concerned about the height. If we need to go to 3 stories on the corner, that would be fine as far as I'm concerned. And whether the site plan gets flipped or not isn't crucial in my mind.
This is John Schaefer.
Go ahead, John. Mhm.
I think it's fine. I don't feel real strong commercial. I think it's a great place. The general concept. I strongly feel you should look at flipping and keep as little site infiltration onto people down Conservancy. So I like the flipping the concept and hope you look at that. The general concept of the housing, I think it's fine. The commercial with mall, I think it could be it's not a big deal for me.
Dan?
Again, I would agree with others that I frankly kind of like the building. I like the design. I think that it would fit well there. I'm curious with the commercial. I would like to know if you did put commercial in, what that would do to the density, how many more apartments you think you would need, what commercial would do to your viability and how you would have to change the project.
Any other questions or comments? I would say, somehow this corner has been unlucky that the commercial didn't really go too well. So if there's a commercial, what is the commercial? So anyway, if we knew that why the other restaurants over a period of time didn't really succeed, what is going on there anyway? So I'm not hung up on one or the other, but yeah, looks fine to me. So I think your next step is, having a neighborhood meeting and getting their input. That is pretty important. So I think, as Abby would say, and the other would say, the neighborhood is very important. That can make or break the project. So getting the neighborhood input is important. You can see the plan commission is on board.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate your time. And we have tried to keep the neighborhood, at least the alders, involved by sending them the packets as well. So thank you again for your time.
Okay, all right.
All right.
So any further input, John or Tim, or you're happy now?
Abby, this is Jen. Do you know when the next Conservancy Lands Commission meeting is?
I think it's tomorrow, isn't it?
It's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So not time, it wouldn't be able to get on the agenda for tomorrow.
For agenda, okay.
No, it wouldn't make it.
Good point, Jen. All right.
Thank you
So,
all very much.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you for your time and thank you for the presentation. And we move on to item number 3. This is concept review of design changes, Milton Market and AVD Apartment 762 Lisa Lane. Abby, you want to take it or who is going
Sure.
to take it?
Well, and we also have our TIF consultant, Jeff Maloney, on the meeting as well, and he can go over some of the design changes if the commission wishes. We discovered this through Jeff, our TIF consultant, back in November, that there were some exterior changes that were being made during the construction of this much anticipated project in Middleton. And Jeff noticed the changes right away because of the extensive design review process that this project went through and the many iterations that the city reviewed. And we have now met with the developers and their representatives a couple of times to go over our concerns with the changes. And we've basically landed that, you know, these changes are not something that our staff even has the authority or the ability to approve. So if the developers decide to proceed down this route without making any modifications to the building as constructed, they would need to apply for an SIP modification for design review. And it would need to go to the city council for approval. And the reason for that is because there was a large TIF incentive that was associated with this project. So I think that, you know, after meeting with Robin Farrow of Tresta Group and the other developers representatives, they have indicated to the city that they are open to discussing the changes, and it seems like they're open to making modifications if required by the city. And, you know, the SIP is part of the zoning for the property. So right now, the property as it's being constructed is not in compliance with the zoning, which means it's not in compliance with the TIF agreement that the city signed. The developer had noted that they had applied to the state through their commercial building code review process for a modification to the building. And they thought that when they applied to the state that the city would be made aware of those changes, but it's actually incumbent on the developers to bring those plans to the city, and we never received a copy. So we didn't see the plans that the state approved until December when we requested them from the developer. And the state doesn't review plans per the city's requirements for zoning or design review or any of those changes. They're only looking at whether or not the plan meets the state's building code. So I think there are, you know, a few options to consider, and I guess I'll turn it over to Jeff Maloney, our TIF consultant, to see if he has anything to add.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, everybody. No, I mean, I included in the packet a list of the elevations that were provided by Robin and her team, just so you could see what had been changed from the approved SIP code application and what she sent us, which I think are the drawings from the state approved building plans. And those do seem to reflect what's being constructed. So I won't go over all those. There was obviously some changes for the positive and also some larger changes, mostly that southern elevation that faces the street. And also there's a sort of a primary architectural feature on the western building that is a little bit different. You probably noticed in the packet. But if you have specific questions, I looked at these in detail and I can help answer those. But I know Robin's also here to talk about some of that.
Robin, would you like to say something now, or?
You know, this is Doug Buck. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Okay, sure.
So I'm an attorney and I represent the developer. And I just thought I would introduce this issue if I could. First of all, by thanking staff for allowing us to come before you for some direction on how to handle this. By way of background, this project was approved as a PDD, and then there was an SIP that was issued. It was sent to the state for approval. And I don't know if it's possible to show the windows that are really the crux of the issue here are along the food court. And basically what brought this to the city's attention is that some of the windows in the food hall or the food hall were floor to ceiling. And when they took this to the state, they said, well, if you're going to serve food, the food has to be so far back from floor to ceiling windows. And so the plans were modified. The developer did think that the city knew about this modification because they were sent to the city, maybe not the plans, but the approval letter that showed the modifications. And so, we appreciate the opportunity to come before you and figure out how to deal with this. This certainly wasn't a change that the developer made thinking they were going to pull a fast one on the city. They thought that the city was conscious of this because they reviewed the plans before the building permit. I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen, but
Abby, could you share? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
One question here is, can you see this email? Is that showing up?
No, we
Not
just
yet. You need
see
to
you
hit,
now.
if you can, on the bottom of your screen, there's a green up arrow, share screen.
Share screen. You got it now?
Not yet. Do you have a 2 monitor setup?
Oh, I got it.
There you go.
How's that? Can you see the screen now?
Yep.
So there's really just, you have 3 levels of review, and I communicated with your city attorney, and a little bit of disagreement between us and your staff. Minor changes to a plan the staff can approve. And remember, this is a $55-60 million project. It's over by Fitzgerald's and where Bogies used to be. It's almost a city block, but this block is so big that it's not a full city block, but it's huge. We think these are minor changes. The staff is calling them substantial alterations to the SIP, which need not only your approval, but then the city council approval. We would consider like a substantial alteration if we wanted the food hall to be residential use, not changing a floor to ceiling garage window to a standard window. And then there are major changes that just require plan commission approval. So one of the things we're hoping to do is get some direction from you all in terms of what is the process that you want us to follow. And then secondly is maybe a little bit of direction on the timing, because as I think Ryan and Robin can explain a little bit, so the food hall concept and tenanting that aspect of this project is proving challenging in today's COVID world. So thank you.
Okay, Robin or Ryan?
I'm gonna, am I supposed to raise my hand? I'm gonna go next.
No, go ahead, Robin.
I just want to give you a little overview of why we made the changes that we did. And again, reiterate that it was never our intention. As I've told Jeff and Abby when we've met, I had no idea they hadn't had the plans, that they hadn't seen the plans. And so some of the changes that we made for operational reasons aren't actually probably going to be valid because of what happened with COVID. But so I'm going to walk through the big picture on why we made the changes, and then Ryan's going to walk through the individual elements from a construction standpoint, that what we did. And then we'd like to talk to you guys, kind of some feedback on timing. Is it a major or minor modification, just like Doug said? So we changed the front of the food hall because of feedback from not only the state, but also Department of Health, and where we were going to put food stands within the space. So we don't want the space to be designed like a food court. And so as we looked at how the design worked and how the layout works, there were booths at the time that were going to be on that elevation where there were full-size garage doors, and Dane County Health did not like that. There's distances that they recommend. Now, they won't say you can't do it, But they said that licensing of those food vendors would be very difficult with those garage doors in proximity to food construction. And so what-
Robin, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Is that the south elevation along Lisa Lane? Okay.
Yes. along
South
the-
elevation, Lisa Lane. Okay.
Yep, this right here, you can see the picture. And so what we did is we took the garage doors from that elevation and we moved them to the courtyard to engage the courtyard, the beer garden, the whole center of the community, and where the parking and where we plan to have the winter market and the garage doors to be able to open into that space. And we made these walls more solid to help the layouts inside for renting. Now, I will say that everything we've done inside has to be revamped because of COVID. All the vendors we had LOIs with are not moving to doing, hold it, I'm sorry, I had a phone call, sorry. Are moving to, they're not saying no, they don't want to do it, but they're definitely at the point where they want to hold until we find out what happens. But what we're really seeing is nobody wants to share large spaces like refrigeration, storage of food goods. Because what happens is if my staff gets a COVID infection and they were all in the back storage area, that means every vendor right now in the whole space has to close their facilities as well. And so we don't quite know what the answers are yet. We've actually been talking to other food halls. We've been looking at what they're doing across the country, and we're kind of in a holding pattern. We want to go through till we get into spring to know what the best new interior layout to that space is going to be. On the other side of the building, we actually changed the roof line slightly. So Ryan will talk through that. We had a spa that was coming in and they wanted the roof line to be different on that side of the building. It wasn't a significant change, but that was changed. So you'll see that was different. And the concern that Jeff had with the architectural entry is actually back to the original plan. So that entry into that we call building A, which is the retail building, not the market building, has gone back to its original design. So if Ryan, do you want to walk them through kind of just the window changes so they're aware of what's different and the roof line change?
Sure. So I don't know if you want to start on the page that we're all looking at right now, that A and B east elevation. The storefront windows there you're seeing that look like they were changed on the bottom picture. Actually, the design went back more to look more like the original design. And same with the storefront windows also on that west building that are on the A south elevation up at the top. And those were actually changed in a construction bulletin that you did receive on the concept review submittal. That was part of the attachment as well. So those did change back. As far as the entrance on the bottom, we had a building entrance into the main corridor for the tenants. That's where that it's marked there, that entrance and window changed. So you had some larger windows added above the signage, and then the entrance was moved over to be in line with the corridor. And then the main entrance into that added retail space is where that entrance was relocated to the left. If you have any questions on this elevation, I can answer them. Otherwise, we can
Any
move on.
questions for Ryan?
Yeah, this is Jen. So why did some of the balconies go away?
I don't think any balconies went away.
Oh, okay. If it's just the material change.
Correct. Yeah, and there was a material change there, and basically that was just to make it in line with the brick veneer portion below. Just to bring that all the way up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Well, just a question for Abby. Are we taking each change one by one? Because if the question is whether it's a major SIP modification or a minor SIP modification, is it the cumulative total of all the modifications? Or is it that we vote on each one, whether it's minor or not? Because this looks like material changes and a few alterations. This looks like a minor change. I know the big change is on the south elevation.
Yeah, and our concern was primarily related to the south elevation, and also just in past practice dealing with design modifications, and also just any changes to projects that received that have an SIP in place and received a TIF incentive. Our council has, oops, sorry, my light goes off every once in a while. Our council has weighed in that it is a change to the TIF agreement, because the TIF agreement specifies that the SIP zoning the developer must comply with the SIP zoning in order to be in compliance with the TIF agreement. So that is why our staff is determined that this would require council approval. Just a recent example is that the Middleton Center redevelopment project, when they made a change to their parking plan, the council wanted to see that change and they wanted to be involved with approving that as an SIP modification because it was spelled out in the TIF agreement.
Okay. Thank you, because normally minor SIP modifications don't go to council, so. Okay.
Thank you, Kurt. So, yeah,
If I could just add to, that comment, we did, it's a little bit difficult for us to know what, what was part of the SIP and what wasn't. And, there are certainly plans attached to the SIP, but, and there certainly were discussions with the city, but in terms of like these garage doors, when we went back and looked at the record, they were mentioned in the GDP approval that it would be nice that the retail space windows could extend from floor to ceiling to increase transparency, but it's not like the development agreement for this project specifically called out these windows, or that the windows were mentioned in any way other than they're shown on the elevations, just for clarity.
yeah, I think if material change for it, the way I really see there's one of the communication issue and some misunderstanding. I think that's one big thing which I see. And the other was changes which was suggested by the public health, and I guess for the food hall, and I don't see if the Department of Dane County Health suggested something. I think that seems to make sense to me. So I don't really see big issues there. And the other is the pandemic is changing things, and some changes related to that would have to be made. So anyway, that's how I see a communication and some misunderstanding, and and some changes suggested by the Dane County Health. So, okay, so what is the next? Go ahead. Any other questions or comments here before we move forward?
On this elevation,
go ahead.
the materials across the building, sort of the blocking of colors, is that still the same, or is that changed at all?
That's still the same.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We're still talking about the east elevation, and the screen right now is showing the south elevation, right? I just want to make sure we're talking,
Yeah, the east elevation, we did see that one, and you thought that was just a minor thing.
I think the main concern for everybody, we can kind of focus on that one and come back if there's any other additional questions.
So Kurt, this you thought was just a material change and not a problem with you.
well, there's a few windows removed,
So
but
go ahead.
I don't have any objections to the changes on the east elevation.
Okay, all right, let's move to the next one. Anyone else, please, if any questions or concerns? So, okay, now we are to the south elevation. Okay, go ahead. Ryan or Robin or whoever.
Just tell us what the changes are.
Ryan, walk through the changes, please.
We may have lost him. So Robin, do you want
Okay,
to?
I'll walk through the changes. So like Ryan said, on the lower right-hand corner where Jeff had highlighted, those have all reverted back to the original elevations. The big change, and you probably don't notice much, is on the left-hand corner. That is more of a flat roof on the end instead of a shed roof. There is no longer a roof deck on that corner.
Sorry, I don't know if you, can anybody still hear me?
Oh,
Seems
there's-
to
Yeah, we can hear
Now we
you
can.
now,
be
Ryan.
breathing quite a bit
Okay, go
here.
ahead. Okay, go ahead, Ryan. Thank you, Robin.
Yeah.
Jen has
So-
a question. So my question is on the right side of the drawing here on page 71, the very top there, right where you're circling, why was the windows, the full glazing changed out with two small windows? And did the height change at all? It doesn't, I guess it doesn't appear that the height changed, but maybe it's just visually because of those windows are so small. Could you maybe explain why that was changed?
Yep, sorry, I seem to have cut out there for a little bit, but I'm back. So that was one of those areas that I was discussing before, that those storefront windows actually were added back in on a construction bulletin, and that was shown on that review submittal packet that was part of this. So most of those storefront windows are all back in. That should look similar to the original design. The height should stay the same as well. We didn't change anything with the height.
So the final is more looking like the top picture, not the bottom on that part.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Correct,
you.
yes.
Yeah, really on this face, the only aesthetic changes are the height of that roof, which you might notice, and we wanted to call it out so you knew. The shed roof has gone more flat, and the removal of the roof deck.
Over on the left. Okay, thank you.
Correct.
So Robin, can you explain why the roof deck was eliminated? What was on the roof deck before? Was it a usable space for the tenants, or?
It was, or actually, to be quite honest, the architect put it in and I wasn't aware of it. And we did not want spaces that were just accessible for one building versus another building. And we also want to push tenants down to the public spaces where there's amenities, and including the market itself.
So it was again a communication issue, so.
And
Okay.
I think a flat roof is better than a pitched roof, given the rest of the building.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, Kurt.
Well, I'm quite glad. I'm glad you like it, Kurt.
Randy, you have further question?
And not on this element.
Okay. Okay, anybody else has further questions on this particular elevation? Okay, go to the next one.
So on this one, on that back F partial north elevation, which is where most of the changes were on this, the only reason anything was different here is because on that back end is where we had to put all of our electrical equipment, and we have some generators sitting there. And then to the right of that a little bit on that brick veneer, that was where there were two larger kitchens located with the interior market design. So that is why those changed from the overhead doors to a solid wall there.
Actually, Ryan, those weren't overhead doors. I think those were just doors, and we moved overhead doors into this corner because that's where and a service window for the bar, because that's where the bar is originally.
Yeah, you're right. We added them. Yep, you're correct.
Can you remind us on that partial north elevation, where would I be to see that?
You'd have to be standing at the back of that wing. So that's not facing the street.
That faces the courtyard, Kurt, and so it's one of the entrances. If you're looking at the wall, the brick facade, if you turn to your left, there's an entrance into the building for the residents. But you have to walk down. It's well set in from the street face.
Because it's not building A, which is on Lisa Lane. This is building F.
Yeah, this is the food hall. and it's the back end of the food hall, partially. There's restrooms actually back there right now. Like he said, there were kitchen layouts back there. And then you go into the stair corridor that the market attaches to.
And Robin, is this the area where you were talking about having outdoor space available for the market? Where you're
Yeah,
gonna
so
push?
those garage doors, Randy, open up into what would be an outdoor patio fenced in, the intent being a beer garden area back there. And at the time, we planned to put, depending on where the electrical falls, our plan is to put a mural on that wall there. We just don't know how much electrical is going to take up of that wall.
Okay.
So if I remember, and it was a while ago, so I'm sorry, I'm getting old. The idea was that the floor to ceiling windows would provide a way so that someone on the outside of the building would be able to look in and see it as a food hall, much like if you're standing on that street by the street by the streetcar in Milwaukee, you can look into the Milwaukee Public Market and you see that kind of activity and openness. Is that what I remember?
Partially, and the problem we ran into was the health department issues with solid walls and where those openings could be for booths within the layout, and trying to avoid making it feel like a food court with inside the space. Can you, if you want to switch to the other south elevation, that will show what Kurt's talking about. Yeah, this elevation here. So this is the one that has the most substantial changes on. If Ryan, if you want to walk through those.
Yeah, are we sliding down to the, there we go. Okay. So we had some overhead doors here that were replaced with some windows, but everywhere there was an overhead door, we did keep glass. And again, this was all due to the market interior layout, trying to make that functional. We had a little bit of an adjustment to the main entry there to create a vestibule into the main market space. And then to the right, there was another entrance added, and that had to be added per code because that was a separate room that was going to be its own individual coffee shop, so it had to have an entrance. Questions in regards to this area?
Yeah, you're breaking up, so you should be close to your phone or whatever. So
Into the main market space.
Yeah, Ryan was saying that we had to add another entrance there in a vestibule, the vestibule for one of the entrances, and a second entrance that wasn't on the original design, so that right-hand corner of the building can actually function as a separate lockable coffee shop for the market, so it can have separate hours from the market itself.
So is that also with Dane County Health requested?
Yeah, so the change in those garage doors on the front was, and the taking out of those two windows opposite the door were a function of where the booths ended up laying out. And Dane County Health did not want garage doors in proximity to food vendors.
Okay.
Robin, or was it the fact that the garage doors could open, or was it the floor to ceiling glass?
No, it was the opening of the garage doors, Randy.
So is there the ability to, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't here on the commission when the project went through the approval, so I don't know how important the amount of glass or the overhead doors were to the approval process, but would there be the ability to extend some of the glass further to get more permeability, but to keep them so that they're not maybe they're not operational, maybe they're just fixed?
That's one of the things that we really are willing to talk about anything to a certain extent because we know the interior has to be relayed out for the market. So what we didn't want to have to do is whole scale just go back to the way it was because there were issues with garage doors on that face and things of that nature. But we're certainly open to some discussions about, or obviously we're hoping that this could turn into more, let's make some changes that make sense to what the Plan Commission feels we need to do. And that works for the function of the market in a post-COVID world.
Well,
So
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Randy. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I know Jen and Dan were there, so they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we actually talked about these floor to ceiling windows that much, other than in the sense that when presented with the design, we liked that kind of openness, transparency, and that kind of ability for the doors to be open and people to kind of walk in and out in the summer. So I think that, at least for me, that principle can be adopted, particularly if it's at street level with a street level window so people can see in the place where you've removed the 2 overhead doors. I don't think we talked about it too much as a because you already have quite a lot of windows.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of our time was spent also, it was a little bit higher, I think, from what I remember. I think David Reed spent a lot of time with Robin, from what I remember. So to this part, there were a lot of changes, but I don't remember the specific details of it now. So
Kurt's recollection of the garage doors is correct. We like the idea of that you could open them and kind of have the openness where you could see. That was really, Kurt's correct. That was really the only discussion we had there. But, and I agree with Kurt, I think you can get that same thing by putting, the full size windows in there, large windows in there, and get that same look. And I would be perfectly fine with that.
One of the things that it wouldn't do is function in a permeable way, like the original, design and the openings did, where more of a park casual feel, in and out of the market without going in these more formal vestibules. Do I like that concept better than this one? Yes. Did we discuss it before? Probably not in detail. I do remember the visual cue discussion we had with being able to look in. But yeah, this certainly takes a different feel from the street and the permeability of that, the building envelope.
But you're telling us that Dane County Health says you can't have those opening garage doors, right?
Well, Dane County will never tell you absolutely can't have it until you go for your food approval, but they recommend
if your vendors can't
anywhere we had food service that we didn't have garage doors. So anywhere there was an operable kitchen. And again, I do believe the interior is going to move design wise a little bit, but we also don't want just a big U of stalls that look like a mall. We wanted to have the scatteredness within the site, and having some solid wall on that face helps that for us. That's actually why that entry, the one entry, has solid wall, because then you can back vendors up into that space and you don't have to have them all in one area, and you can scatter them within the floor plan more. I would think that if we could live with those walls there, we could probably work on the windows where the garage doors were to make those more engaged to the street front.
Is there a way to the right of the, that main vestibule area where you have put some stalls in? I'm looking at page 62, the site plan. I see tables there to the right and left of that main vestibule. Would that be an acceptable location for garage doors?
What you're running into there is those are exactly opposite those food vendor locations. So you're not only working with F, A, B, and C. So F and A are directly next to the garage doors, that becomes a problem.
Okay. I
The
see.
John Schaefer, I really like Commissioner Murray's confirmation of bringing these windows down. I don't feel so strong about the garage doors, but if you accommodate even when I walk downtown, you're all, when windows are deep, I feel get sucked in and engage right with it, as opposed to it's a wall where you have to peek in a building. I just think it's an opening environment, whether it's a garage door or not. So I have a willingness to look at where's garage doors is at least look some floor to ceiling windows in there.
Yeah, I'm with John. I'm not stuck with garage doors. So if the public health isn't going to be happy with this, let's not bother with it. Any further questions or comments? Okay, so what's next, Ryan or Robin?
Well, you know, this is Doug Buck. I mean, maybe one thing we might, and Robin, I don't mean to take the floor from you, but we might suggest is that, you know, some sort of indication to staff about, it sounds like maybe the other changes are minor and could be approved at the staff level. And then maybe what we would propose is that once we're ready to tenant this space, that any modifications come back to this commission as a minor modification for your review and approval, but that we wait to see where the tenant breakout of this food hall ends up to come back to you.
Okay.
Tenant which space? The food hall?
Food hall.
Except that if the building's already built, we're not going to make you put in a window because you'd have to cut a hole in the wall.
Well, to be frank, the window areas have already been built, so it won't cost us much more.
Kurt, we understand that you have a position that you can make us put windows in. Would we prefer not to? Yeah, but we also know that this space is going to change. And so if we can come to an agreement that you guys would like to see these windows go down, I can make it work around the space with the new layouts. We're not opposed to adding that at this point.
Mayor, could I propose something?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. Adam.
So I guess just to start with, I'm delighted about the change that was being proposed to Unit A on the south elevation, the glass on the lofted fifth story. I'm delighted to hear that you're not changing that. I think that's a wonderful modification. And then the other primary concern that we had related to the south elevation. And so, you know, one solution could be for you to submit an SIP modification for the other changes, but to keep the floor to ceiling glass in place of the garage doors, and then to keep the glass on that Unit A south elevation, and then bring that back as an SIP modification to the Plan Commission.
Abby, would that have to go to the City Council as well in your proposal?
I personally think that that is something that the Plan Commission could approve as a minor SIP modification if they feel comfortable going that route.
But
you
Abby,
know, assuming.
So Abby, would that be once post the pandemic? I don't know, what is your schedule for this food hall, Robin? I mean, is it, you're not doing that right now because you will have to.
Our hope is to start tenanting again in summer. So we would work on this plan in spring, bring it back to you at the end of spring, and then once you've approved it, start tenanting it in summer for a fall, hopefully a fall opening.
And Robin, what would be the reason for I mean, if we have the solution that we've kind of come up with, sketched out here now, what would be the reason for waiting to submit? It sounds like you're very concerned about having to go to council, so I assume you want to get something approved quickly. So why wouldn't you just submit and get something before the Plan Commission as an SIP modification like in February?
I'm fine. It might be the end of February, Abby, but given the things that we're just talking about, I'm fine with coming back at that rate. That's fine. And we can work the interior around that.
To me, that would be preferable because I think the last thing the city wants to do is be put into a position where you guys are like ready to open and we're in any way holding things up, because I know people are really excited, myself included, about the project. So the last thing we want to do is be standing between you and getting your tenants into a building.
Yeah,
My preference would be sooner.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay.
Can I,
So
so with that, you see on this display where it says Markets of Middleton, that's kind of a bump out of a building that has the sloped roof where you've taken off the 2 overhead doors. What is the width of that?
Ryan, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Just the width of the doors you're talking
No,
about?
just the width of that whole building section that's kind of in the red or orangish colored brick.
55.
I don't know exactly without pulling the plans up, but you're probably looking at, I don't know, 50 feet, 60
Okay.
feet roughly.
So our concern to have windows so people can look in, that's not that much of a blank space to be worried about. If we're trying to avoid kind of blank wall, as John was saying, so that you're peering around the corner or you kind of have this imposing wall that people walk by.
Yeah, and our
That's-
design, we'd bring tables out in front of there actually from the market for summer. So it actually, because right now, before we really didn't have a lot of space to put tables on.
Yeah, and I think my feeling was not so worried about the one wall. The entire front has had nothing going to the street. That's north. So if you look at what is to the east side of that south and bring windows down, that's enough. You don't need to worry about those blanks in the middle, Kurt.
I have to see that, the developer, Robin, I'm sure you want to succeed, and we will provide you all this input. One of the things which I see is the communication. Please, going forward, communicate with staff, whatever issues there are. And if you have some of the things which you did with the county or county asked you, please again, let our staff know. And so I think communication is one of the big things. And it looks like it happened from the misunderstanding that you thought that, whatever the Dane County Health suggested, that we got that information, but we didn't. So I think, and the other is that whatever is Dane County is asking you or you think will be requiring, you should probably put that in there now. And we want you to be successful and we don't want you to delay this, but we also don't want, to be blindsided. So I think communication will be very, very important. So any other questions or comments?
This is Jen. Abby, is the definition of a substantive change somewhere? And if it's not, could we direct staff to ensure that it's put somewhere that everyone understands what that means?
That would be something that we could define further in the zoning ordinance rewrite later this year. So there is language in the zoning ordinance now, but it's not entirely clear.
Okay.
Well, in fact, Jen, I'm looking at it right now. It's 10.93 of our ordinance. And it's if in the opinion of the Plan Commission, such change or modification constitutes a substantial alteration of the specific implementation plan, it shall be required to be amended through the same procedures of the SIP, which means going to council in a public hearing.
I would agree with Abby's recommendation that it would not be a substantive change if it came back as modified with windows on the south elevation to the ground, and the other changes occurred as you have, other than the one window way on the top on the, I think it's the southwest corner, where that is remaining. I'm fine with the window as originally planned on that corner.
Okay. And how about Randy? How about you?
I would agree. I think the solution that is being discussed is a good one, and I think it works well and it keeps the intent of the design.
Okay, thank you. John?
I concur.
Okay. Dan Ramsey?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Kurt?
Yep, good with that.
Okay, all right. I'm fine too. So, okay, anything else which you need now?
No, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Please communicate. That's
will.
very important. So
Yeah,
just
I'm back in charge.
okay, okay. So, okay, I think, all right, we're gonna move on to item number 4. Thank you, everyone. Referral from Common Council, requirement for neighborhood meeting for rezoning request. So Abby, or who wants to take it?
This came up during a city council meeting when the rezoning for 3810 was being discussed, and we learned that nearby property owner was upset that they weren't notified of the GIP amendment. And generally, a neighborhood meeting is something that is held by the developer at the recommendation of city staff, but there's nothing in our policy anywhere that says that it's a requirement. It's generally just a recommendation. And actually, in that instance, I didn't recommend a neighborhood meeting. And the reason for that is that the major change had already occurred through the first GIP amendment, which was to convert that property to an exclusive residential use and to allow 125 units of apartments. The second GIP was to increase the number from 125 to 130. So, you know, my determination was that wasn't substantial enough to require or to even recommend a neighborhood meeting. And the city council, after discussing that project, expressed interest in just requiring a neighborhood meeting for every rezoning application. And this is just to clarify, this would be for a GIP, not for an SIP. So it would follow with the city's public notification requirements for rezoning applications. And so our recommendation is to put in place a requirement. The meeting would continue to be held by the developer. City staff would be invited and would attend the meeting. They would set up the meeting at a location of their choosing, probably holding it virtually for now, invite interested parties to attend. City staff is always willing to provide a list of neighboring residents, which we do for every neighborhood meeting. The applicant shall also invite the alderperson representing the district. And they would need to notify at least property owners within 250 feet of the project boundary, because that's who would get the rezoning hearing notice when the city sends out our notification. And then the biggest change from current practice is that we would require a statement to be submitted with an application for rezoning, describing reasonable efforts that were made by the developer to meet with and receive input from individuals from the neighborhood. And our recommendation is recommend this to the License and Ordinance Committee, and then they would bring back an ordinance amendment. We would need to hold a public hearing.
Okay, I make that recommendation, Abby, to the LNO. Need a second?
Second it.
Okay, second by John. Let's have a discussion.
Abby, quick question. When we changed our zoning ordinance maybe 2 or 3 years ago to expand the feet distance for notice for variances and conditional uses, do you remember that? What did we expand that to?
I don't think we changed the foot distance notice. What we did was we put in place a requirement for a yellow sign to be posted on the property for a period of 21 days.
Okay.
And that is the most effective way to get the word out to people, really, is through the sign. We've even found that when we send the mailers, people don't open them. If they see it's from the city, it just looks like junk mail and they throw it away. So we oftentimes will get complaints from people who said, well, I just thought it was just junk mail and I threw it away. But the yellow signs are very, very effective, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about that.
And we post yellow signs for rezoning applications as well?
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we provide them. We require the applicant to post them on the property.
Any further questions or comments? I agree with you, Abby. So those things do work. Okay. Any further questions or comments? We are sending it to LNO. Okay, so the motion is to recommend this to LNO, and all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are on to the next big thing now. We have been working on this for a long, long time. So the time has come to vote, and this is item number 5. This is the discussion and recommendation for draft City of Milton Comprehensive Plan 2021. Abby, take it.
Thank you. Yep. I just wanted to go over a few additional changes that have been made to the document and flag them for you all. So we got some feedback from the Plan Commission at the January 12th meeting, and you guys recommended that we make some modifications to the sidewalk gap map, that we incorporate the Friends of Pheasant Branch comments, that we modify the land use map to make sure that it was clear on the 2 different colors. And then you also made some changes to one of the category definitions. That one was for avenue mixed use. So all of those changes have been incorporated to the document that was included in your packet. Since then, we received some additional feedback. The Landmarks Commission met on January 21st, and they prepared a recommendation expressing concern about the proposed zoning category, and what they meant was the proposed future land use category of the Rowley House Museum that is listed as government and institutional. The Landmark Commission supports consideration of the architectural and historic significance as a residential building when selecting the appropriate zoning or future land use category. They also requested that any future changes to the City Hall site be harmonious, compatible, and sensitive to the historical significance and architecture of the Rowley House Museum and adjacent historic residential homes. This was with regard to concerns about how the community campus plan will develop. We also received a similar statement from the Historic Middleton Station Neighborhood Association. They do not support government and institutional zoning adjacent to residential homes. They support changing the proposed zoning to reflect the desire of the neighborhood, and they would require infill projects to be sensitive and compatible with surrounding and adjacent homes to ensure the historic character of the neighborhood remains intact. The Middleton Area Historical Society also provided a comment on January 25th. They oppose the rezoning of the Rowley House Museum and the adjacent City Hall site as government and institutional. They thought that a more appropriate option would be neighborhood mixed use, and the society's desire is to ensure that zoning is harmonious, compatible, and sensitive to the significance of the Rowley House Museum. So just to clarify, the future land use map shows a community's preference for how it wants to use lands within a 20-year time frame. It is not a zoning map. It is a policy. It is not a policy. It is a guide for land use policy making. Since the future land use map is the community's vision of their preferred future, it is the local governing body's responsibility to implement policies that help make that vision, as shown in the future land use map, a reality. The future land use map should not be confused with an official map or a zoning map. I also wanted to point out that the current zoning map, different from the future land use map, shows the Rowley House Museum right here on Hubbard Avenue as zoned 2-family residential, or R2, which is similar to many of the homes in the neighborhood, even those that are used as a single-family residence, but that the City Hall site, as well as the other city-owned sites in the downtown, are zoned B4, which is downtown business. And within the traditional zoning requirements of the city, downtown business is one of the more intense land use categories in terms of building height. The current zoning within the downtown allows a 0 lot line, and it allows up to 5 stories. We would like to propose that the Plan Commission change the Rowley House Museum, which was previously shown in your draft document, from government and institutional to established neighborhood instead. And so that would make it yellow along with many of the other homes, and it would also kind of be cohesive with the way that the property is zoned now, similarly to the other homes. While the Rowley House Museum is a museum, it really originally was a single family home. And so we are proposing to change that to established neighborhood. But we would like to keep City Hall as government and institutional. And the reason for that is that all of the city properties are government and institutional, and that is in keeping with other communities and how they handle their civic uses.
So,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I did also want to note that within the community campus plan RFP and built into that planning process are some goals, like that we want to protect the historic nature of downtown Middleton, and we want to consider visual and transportation impacts to nearby businesses and residents, and ensure that the design of the future civic campus is compatible with surrounding land uses. Both of these goals from the community campus plan RFP are also incorporated into the comprehensive plan. And we're going to have a lot of conversations and a lot of input still on the community campus plan before any preferred scenario is selected. An additional change that our staff is proposing in response to some of the public input that we got at the last meeting is to create a new action within the Green City chapter that would state that the Sustainability Committee will work in conjunction with the Airport Commission to find ways to measure and then reduce emissions and leaded fuel use at the Middleton Municipal Airport. And we included in your packet a location where we thought this would be a good fit. We have not run this language by the Airport Commission or any other groups. This is something that our staff has worked on, but we know that there is interest in pursuing this from some members of our Sustainability Committee, and our staff is interested in this as well. There were also a couple additional future land use map corrections, and these were flagged for us by Commissioner Bruce. We received these in an email from him, and our staff took a look at it, and we agreed that they are mistakes that were in the draft. So one of those is at the northwest corner of University Avenue and Parmenter Street, just across the street from the Roman Candle. We were showing that remnant parcel, the parcel that used to be the PDQ, as downtown mixed use appropriately, but then the property to the north, we were showing that as established neighborhood, and that is a multifamily housing development, and it doesn't fit within the established neighborhood category, and so we would like to propose changing that to downtown mixed use. And then the other one is on the east side of Marina Court, north of Century Avenue. There are several condominiums, and these are long and narrow parcels, and we were showing them as multifamily, but because the lines were so thick here, it looked like we were showing it as like extraction or some other type of land use. So we've corrected that problem as well. Our recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommend approval of Resolution 2021-7 with these changes incorporated. And if the Plan Commission is prepared to, recommend approval of the comprehensive plan tonight, the schedule going forward would be for the plan or for the Common Council to set a public hearing at the Committee of the Whole meeting this Saturday for February 16th. And then they would hold a hearing on February 16th and recommend approval of first reading of the ordinance to adopt the comprehensive plan. And then on March 2nd, they would recommend approval of the second reading of the ordinance.
Thank you, Abby. So I think we want to go through one item at a time. So how about if I like what the Historical Society and the Landmarks Commission and the neighborhood has recommended. So I would like, I know Kathy's just, she's on the line here. So I know it's not a normal process. I'm going to go ahead and get her input. So Kathy, are you happy with these?
The only thing I'd like to talk about is the definition of the government and institutional. You have it listed on one of your slides there, Abby, right there. Okay. This feels almost incomplete because government and institutional says large-scale public buildings, hospitals, and special care facilities. Small-scale institutional uses such as churches, cemeteries, and elementary schools may be permitted under other land use categories. But that small-scale institutional is not defined anywhere in this future land map, because when you see like St. Luke's Church and other churches, they're all listed as government and institutional, all the elementary schools. There's no differentiation between the two. And I'm wondering but what the government institutional tells me is that the buildings are going to be large scale. Because if they were small scale, they would be a different category.
Could we just make a really simple change, like large and small scale, or just take out large scale altogether and just start?
I would think take out large scale and saying they're public buildings such as the hospitals and could be elementary, churches, anything. But the way it's written now, to me, it tells me that a government and institutional zoning would be large scale buildings.
Yeah, I strongly support that change, getting just say public buildings, hospitals, special care facilities.
And that could even include
then institutional uses other than that. Just both small scale don't seem relevant to me.
Yeah,
I like that
the
idea.
churches, yeah. Thank you. That I would be completely happy with that. Thank you.
So that will make you, Kathy, you and the other folks, the neighborhood happy then, right?
Right.
Okay.
But they can
All
be
right.
they can be big buildings, but it doesn't say that they have to be. Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So, okay, so
Mayor, can I make an additional suggestion? Maybe
Yeah,
it
go
would be
ahead.
helpful to say
yeah,
on the bottom line there, you could say that small scale institutional uses may also be permitted in other land use categories. You could add the word also. I think that goes with the spirit of what Alder Olson was saying.
Kathy, does that sound okay to you?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, how about the others? Is everybody happy with that? Okay, let's move on to item number 2. I think that sounds like a great idea. So reduce the emission related to the fuel and environment is very important. So I think that's really good. I'm happy with that. Any other questions or comments? I think everybody's for who wants lead in the air. So, okay, all right. So let's move on to the next one then. So you already fixed these, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we've made the change, but they weren't shown. They didn't show up in the draft that was in the packet.
So Randy, do you have any further comments on this?
I don't. I appreciate the changes that were made.
Okay. Any other, is there another one, Abby, or that's it? Okay.
That's it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I do have a question. So they are not, so I was looking at some of the tables. You know, you have data with respect to how much is a single family owner occupied. It varies all over. So the last one which you have it is 51%. So what is your source of data? Sometimes, you know, I come up with a ratio that it's apartments and all of those things is 52 or 53, and the owner occupied single family another is 47, 48. What is the data?
Can you provide a reference to the page number, and then we can have
Oh.
Daphne share her screen again and pull it up?
Okay, well, I can just, I just read it and I didn't write down the page and things, so.
Yeah, generally, the best source of data that we have in terms of the number of multifamily versus single family, and also in terms of owner occupied versus renter occupied housing, it's the census. But of course, the census only releases a full data set every 10 years. And so they provide estimates in the interim for some of those. We also create our own estimates based on building permit data that we have, but without knowing exactly which table you're referring to, I can't tell you the source of the data.
So, but you also have, it's somewhere around the same, you know, with respect to the jobs, we have a 25,000 jobs in 2020. I looked at all the ratios too, 25,000 jobs in Middleton. I know that again is going all over the place. You know, sometimes somebody says 18,000, and when you look at the 2017 data, it is 20,000 at that time. And now 2020 is 25. So, well, anyway, maybe I will look at, yeah, I guess it's a pretty 156-page documents. I can't expect you to remember that.
We should, though, under the tables, we should have the data source. So
Do you
if
have
we
them
don't,
footnoted?
we should have those.
In this case, you say census, so.
Page 146 of the packet, I believe.
Daphne, can you pull, do you still have the packet open, and can you share page 146?
Yeah, so there's a somewhere 20, there's a different, anyway, there's a somewhere there 25,000 jobs in 2020 in Middleton. I guess probably that's it. There's a table somewhere. If that's the case, boy, that is lot of jobs. I know you gave it a breakdown too, so.
Yep, this data source is really, it's very accurate, and it's also pretty recent. It's a really neat tool that the census provides called On the Map, and it's from 2017.
Okay, so in 2017, that was the 20,000 jobs in at that time. So now the latest is 25. This will be the 20,000, right?
Well, this is showing the number of people that come to Middleton to work, and then the number of people that leave Middleton for work each day.
Okay, all right, I can talk to you a little bit later. And any other questions or comments from any commissioner, including Kathy? So you guys are happy to recommend now to the for approval?
Yeah, I would move adoption of resolution 2021-7, recommending approval to the Common Council.
Okay, need a second.
I'll second it. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, second by John. Okay, any further question or comments? We have gone over it many, many times. So, all right. If there are no questions or comments, all those in favor of the resolution and as proposed by Commissioner Paulson and second by Commissioner John Schaefer, say aye, whatever this number is.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Abby, 5 years work, right? 5 years work and a lot of sleepless hours, and we are finally moving forward.
Now you can
Anybody
start
else?
working on the 2030 update. Sorry, just kidding.
Anybody has anything else to say before we adjourn? Well, thank you to everyone for your hard work and your input, and it does make a difference. And have a great evening and see you soon, I think on 30th, so. Okay, all right.
You
We
all,
need a
good night.
motion to adjourn.
Thank
I
you.
think so.
Everybody.
Okay, so. all
Motion
those
to
in favor-
adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, we are adjourned. Thank
Good night.
you and
Right.
see you later.
Thank you.